This is an improved old fashioned. Stick around and I'll show you how to make it. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt. I'm a whiskey nerd, and like I said, today I'm going to show you how to make an improved old fashioned. Now you might be asking, how do you improve an old fashioned? After all, it is very simple. It's just whiskey, sugar and bitters, and the answer lies in its simplicity. Because the cocktail is so straightforward, there's no room for a bad ingredient to hide. So if you use better ingredients up front, you're going to get a much better cocktail at the end. Now, this is true for a lot of cocktails. I mean, if you use better ingredients, chances are you're going to get a better result. But in certain cocktails where there's some juices, where there's some sodas used, you can definitely hide lower quality ingredients behind all that extra sugar, behind all that extra sweetness that you're going to get from those other ingredients. And in an old fashioned, there is nowhere for a bad ingredient to hide. Now, this whiskey is really good. It's actually a double oaked or double aged whiskey coming from Ahru. Now, if you haven't seen the video where we emptied out this little mini cask into these bottles, I definitely encourage you to check it out. There's a link up there to that video. But essentially, this is a 6-year-old Oloroso sherry aged whiskey that I then recast in this little mini cask to get some extra oak, to get some extra spice and to get some extra sweetness, and it came out really, really good. If you've seen that video, you know we described it as tasting kind of like maple syrup, that kind of really deep, rich, dense sweetness. So I'll be using a brown sugar syrup to complement that, as well as some Angostura bitters and some orange bitters. Typically for an old fashioned, I really like the combination of Angostura bitters and the Angostura orange bitters, and for this whiskey it works really well because this is a sherry forward whiskey. That kind of spiciness from the Angostura bitters and the citrus notes from the Angostura orange bitters play off really well together, and it comes in a really, really good combination. Now that's more than enough talking about this cocktail. Let's get to making it. It is a stirred drink, so we're going to get a mixing glass and we're going to get a nice rock of ice. I'm going to put that in there. We're going to add to that 2 ounces of our double aged whiskey. Now, you might not have access to a double aged whiskey yourself, but just use a really, really good whiskey. If you can, get one of a nice high proof. This is 56% alcohol by volume, so it's going to be really present in the glass. Because it has that huge bang of sweetness behind it, it's not going to be overpowering. And again, because this whiskey is so sweet, we're not going to be using a huge amount of our sugar syrup. We're only going to be using 1 bar spoon, so about 5 to 7 ml of sugar syrup, just in there like that. Now this is a brown sugar syrup. It's essentially just a 1-to-1 or about a 1.5 to 1 mix of sugar and hot water. Stir it together till it's dissolved and then it's ready to go. I think a brown sugar syrup can add a huge amount of extra flavour to a cocktail than the standard white sugar syrup. We're going to add on top of that 1 dash of Angostura bitters and then 1 dash of the Angostura orange bitters. And then once we have that in, we're just going to stir it down for about 20 to 30 seconds until it's all nice and chilled. Okay, this is nicely chilled now, so we're going to strain it off onto a nice fresh rock of ice, because I like just having that nice fresh rock of ice. It's going to be dry, it's not going to melt as quickly, and I think it works really well. So we're just going to strain this off on top. Ooh, yes. I can already smell the sweetness of this whiskey coming through. And then for a garnish, we're just going to be very simple. We're just going to take a standard orange peel, express some of the oils, rub them around, and pop it in there. Perfect. Now, real quick, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put a new cocktail recipe every Friday and a new whiskey review every Wednesday, so subscribe and you'll see them all. This is really nice. There's such a dense hit of sweetness in there. Like that brown sugar syrup, I think it really does elevate an old fashioned because it's a little bit denser, because it kind of plays in to those caramel notes you get in a whiskey, and because there's very few other flavors competing with the whiskey, that caramel note you get from whiskey is allowed to shine through, and that is complemented by the brown sugar. It's not like it's a competing note, it's a complementing note. And this whiskey as well, I mean, it's 56% alcohol, but it's got that huge amount of sweetness. Because we're not distracting from the whiskey, we're allowed to enjoy it all. And again, it's a sherry aged whiskey, so it's going to be a bit spicy. It's going to have some light citrus notes in it. So the combination of the Angostura bitters and the Angostura orange bitters works out really well. The bit of the orange citrus that kind of floats on the top, those oils, they do hit your nose as you bring it up to your mouth. You get that little hint of sweetness from the orange, and then that's backed up by the really nice, rich taste of the whiskey. This is a cocktail that I could kind of drink all day. I mean, it was, I think, my first ever video I made on the channel back when I didn't really know what I was doing, back when I had really long hair because we were in the middle of a pandemic. And I think this is a much more improved version of it because I've gone in with a bit of a better whiskey. I've gone in with that brown sugar syrup and I've really played it off really well, and I think this is a very good cocktail. So let me know in the comments below, what's your perfect recipe for an old fashioned? I mean, do you use bourbon or a rye or a scotch? Do you use different types of bitters or different types of sugar? The recipe is so versatile because you can just change one ingredient and you end up with a completely different cocktail, and that's really one of the reasons why I love an old fashioned, and it's one of the drinks that I just love experimenting with, and I love trying out a new whiskey with an old fashioned to see how it plays into that cocktail. And that's where I think I'm going to leave this recipe for this week. I mean, it's nice and simple, it's straightforward, it is old fashioned, and it's a really great cocktail to try out if you're a fan of old fashions, or if you don't really like old fashions. Try using a different whiskey, try using a better whiskey, and you will get a very different result. Me though, I'm going to keep on enjoying this one, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.